if empiricism, that means that all knowledge is grounded, whose experience, when. So all these terms get to be nebulous: experience, sleeping, going to bed. These are experiences, but every experience is not of equal standing in the universe of discourse. So, but he meant over against Cartesian rationalism.
So he was reacting to
Descartes. He thought that science was empirical. Well, there is a sense in which it is. You have to investigate. That's no question. Then the ultimate question would be, because of mathematics up to Gödel's theorem, whether you have to investigate mathematics like you have to investigate physics and chemistry, or whether it's a mental construct. But the mental construct enables you to interpret things, because the language will become, 18 and 19, become mathematics.
Right, math is the decoding tool.
That's the tool. So if it is nothing but a social construction, nothing but, then of course, then the results have to be a social construction, nothing but.
Right, you kind of lose your confidence in objective
so
reality.
Then you never have experience. Now to hear this talk, because that would be 1780, laws of physics, laws of science, you've heard this term. Well, no one ever had an experience of the laws of mechanics.
Right, I mean, they maybe jumped off this Golden Gate Bridge and they impact the water and they experience the consequences.
Yeah,
of
or jump off
the
the Empire State Building.
Right.
Or Galileo's free falling body.
Right.
But he demonstrated, now this is amazing, back to him, he demonstrated that weight and speed and distance did not determine acceleration. Every object, regardless of the weight, in the same distance, accelerates at the same time. Well, no one has experienced, I saw that acceleration is identical.
Right.
See, experience, now part of it is experience, but see, it's an interpretation that you enter into theory formation. Theorio means to see, how you see something. You don't just see, like in 18th century empiricism, then we on the way to the view that only nouns have reality. See, the rest of grammar, you see what's going to happen with the language. Only a tree, that's a noun. But anytime you have adjectives and prepositions and conjunctions and things, no one's ever seen any of them. Those are social constructs. Because the only thing we observe are things.
Because the adjective is a value.
You've got this down pat. You know what's coming.
Right.
See, it takes over 100 years to interpret the consequences of what they're saying.
Right. We see the world, but the Christian or the Jew or the Muslim would say, well, this is a beautiful creation of God. But the agnostic, the atheist is going to say, well,
nature red in tooth and claw.
Right. It's just why are we here? Because we're here. Roll the bones.
No.
Yeah.
Correct. But again, neither one see the universe.
Right.
See. Because we see, our seeing is very limited.
Right. We don't see electrons and positrons, but the pilot of the Enola Gay could see photos of destruction after.
He knows, he can test that.
Yeah.
No one, you're correct. No one sees the periodic chart, DNA particle, all kinds of scientific development. No one sees them. But the great creative minds don't just create arbitrarily, because I can't create them. I could do arbitrary creation, but I can't make the periodic chart. So there has to be some grounding in creating those things that I don't see. So the fallacy is not experience, or not having experience. The fallacy is thinking that mere experience explains itself. That's the whole unpacking of that problem.
And it ignores the whole fact of extrapolation.
Now, right, that's correct. And that's always from a battery of assumptions. But all assumptions do not have explanatory power. I don't doubt that everybody has assumptions. I don't doubt that at all.
Sure.
But I do doubt that all assumptions have equal explanatory power. So I want to know whether it has predictive capability and explanatory power. That's how I would tell the difference between just making statements and a scientific possibility.
Right.
If it can't predict, all it's doing is explaining this particular event, and it can't predict anything from it. Well, I don't know that that's particularly a scientific statement. Because both those things are imperative for science and not just mere experience. Everybody has experience.
Right. Aristotle described and tried to explain a lot of things, but
he needed metaphysics. He knew he had to have meta. Well, that drives the postmodern world up the wall, and the wall is very high.
Yeah.
And they don't want meta. They don't want any organizing system. They're just pragmatic. If it works, it's right. Well, all kinds of things work. So you open yourself out for.
So Hume, in his response or reaction to Descartes, maybe just being a child of his time, where they just didn't realize how complex reality was.
Well, I would say these are geniuses.
Right.
Hume, Locke, Berkeley. These are geniuses, not just because they're in the history books, they are there, but I think they're there for a purpose, because I'm not in the book, because I'm not there for a purpose. But these people, they're doing the best at the time.
With the data and knowledge they had.
Now, I do believe that.
Right.
These not, whatever it is, they're not brain dead.
Right.
So they're trying to explain something. Right. Now, that all creative minds are trying to explain something.
Sure.
I mean, nobody said, well, I don't care what it means, just forget all about it.
Right.
But anyway, Hume is in the empirical tradition. Hume assumed, and the history of science demonstrates that mere experience is not all of science. That's not possible. You can't explain any of the laws of physics merely by experience.
You have to order the data in a purposeful fashion.
Now that does not come about by experience, or everybody could already by experience have ordered it. Well, that's clearly not the case, so something's wrong with that. So, and then Kant comes along and said there's some limitation both to rationalism and empiricism, and he was correct in that.
Yeah. In
that evaluation. Now, what Immanuel Kant did in the first critique, and then he placed ethics in the practitia, practical. So it had nothing to do. But Kant did not, there's no evidence that he intended to refute God, but he was removing God from any of the classical apologetics, Aquinas or any form of it. And what he did, he got rid of the universe. Now, he didn't acknowledge that, but Yaki and I think people who studied the history of science said he not only got rid of God, he got rid of everything. I believe that.
Now, would his motivation, if he was conscious of doing that, would his motivation have been that if I remove the cosmos, if I remove this emerging sense of nature, then it's no longer a subject of study that can be used to refute God and ethics?
Now, there's no question, I think, of that. But I have no passage, no paragraph in the first critique that he was even aware of the consequences of that.
Okay.
But he was, apologetics is not how you come to God. Right. Well, that sounded, I feel that you don't come to the biblical God, creator, redeemer, incarnate God merely by apologetics. I never did believe that, so that's not a problem to me. But that's why cosmology becomes so important, because we're dealing with a great deal more, not less, than God. We're dealing with the universe.
Right, how do you account for it?
How do you account for the universe? Don't worry about accounting for God. If you can account for the universe without God, then I think you've accomplished more than I think you could accomplish.
Right.
I think that's the ultimate significance of that move.
Right. If contingency can be removed from the nature of the universe.
Now,
or cosmos.
and see, by the time you get to Newtonian mechanics, you've got the world machine.
Right. It becomes ultimate reality.
Now, if the world is a machine, and man, including him, are part of the machine, what does that make of the mind? See, long before we get to the computer analog, mind, body, soul, and man, if the brain is nothing but a low-grade computer, that's a machine.
Right, and the mind is just merely software
Now,
that runs in the heart.
now that's what will happen in the development of high tech. The mind is nothing more,
No, and there's
without
no-
realizing that the mind developed the technology.
Right. But they reduce the mind to chemistry, and then saving souls talk is nonsense.
Oh,
there is no such thing as a
total
soul.
nonsense. Or love, that don't make any.
At best, soul is reduced to a metaphor for something.
That's
which
what
is
happens.
reducible
God's
to-
a metaphor at best.
Yeah.
Try to self-help therapy for cripples.
Right. Therapeutic projection.
No, this is why the therapeutic invasion in our culture comes at that time. All that's left for God is He helped me get through the night.
Yeah.
He dried my eyes from tears.
And as the Beatles sing, whatever gets you through the night is all right.
Now, the Beatles not singing about this. That's exactly what they were singing.
Right. Yeah.
So it isn't just academic.
No, it's pop culture as well.
Now, once it reaches pop culture, it's at everybody's house.
Yes, whether they're aware of it or not.
It's not merely who gives a hoot about any of these big names.
They don't know the big names, but they experience the
But they
consequences.
know the
They
consequences.
experience the influence.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But see, that's the thing. The big names by themselves only create the problems. But the problems, the solution to the problem shows up at pop level. It always happens. You can't live. See, it's just trying to live, make sense out of life. Whether it's the Beatles or whoever it is.
So Kant, he, whether intentionally or unintentionally, he gets rid of God in the universe, and then with the Newtonian world machine, the cosmos becomes ultimate reality. It's infinite in time and space, and so Hegel's pantheism then arises.
Hegel tries to answer Kant,
Okay.
both Germans,
Yeah.
and Hegel and his Geist. Well, that's Darth Vader. I don't know.
Force.
The Force, you got the Force, you got it here.
Yeah.
And Hegel, the positive contribution of Hegel's phenomenology was that he was trying to respond to what, and I think that's technically correct, the limitations of Kant's analysis. He was getting God back in, but God was everything.
Right.
It was not, He's the creator, God is everything, gooseberries and rattlesnakes and rhubarb
And goose dropping.
and your aunt
Yeah.
going to do.
Right.
So that's why Hegel's Geist in the phenomenology is just a science of phenomena.
Right.
You know that. But anyway, the Geist was his answer, but again, he got God back in, but it wasn't the God that we got out.
Right. It's not the biblical God of Abraham.
Now, the God of creation.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly
Not a
correct.
personal God who cares or loves anybody.
But
Just-
don't tell me that Hegel thought about. I have no idea. I only know what he said. So what he said was trying to get the God back that he, I think correctly, he got rid of any rational justification for believing God.
even though he was probably a confirmed Lutheran, probably.
Well, it was raised that way. I don't
Yeah.
know how.
I mean,
confirmed it
whether
was.
yeah.
But anyway, his God was the Geist, but that was an impersonal power that run through everything. Now notice what's going to happen with religion. The Geist is in all religions. The Geist is in everything.
Oh yes, all paths lead to
All
ultimate reality.
paths lead to the same place.
Right.
Well, that's exactly where we are.